the question of pathways of development is a very fraught one. You know, for many years, the idea was that the West will provide aid to countries, which is tied aid. You know, we give you money, but you buy our goods with that and so on. It's almost like you're fronting credit, but then they are now indebted to you and will buy your goods and so on. The whole aid model was one way, foreign aid. That was basically the sort of Western model for the immediate years after decolonization. We'll provide foreign aid, then the IMF will, World Bank will provide some loans, and you can create infrastructure and see how it goes. But of course, it was all, as I said, tied aid. It wasn't real. Then the Japanese had another theory called the flying geese theory, which that in every region of the world there is a lead goose, and the other geese are in this V formation. The lead goose has the most advanced technology. And as it advances in technology, it transfers the previous technology to the next goose, and it goes back. So if the most advanced technology is 5G, then you can transfer processing lithium to the next thing. In some ways, I think that right now the flying geese model is the most that we have on the table. So a lot of what the Chinese were doing was essentially the flying geese model, that, it would be better for you to process the lithium in Bolivia. But, we are now advancing to the digital phase, the next phase of technology and so on. That's a flying geese model, and it's much better than the foreign aid model, which was essentially, we are going to leave you at the extraction of the ore, which we're then going to take, we'll process it, and we'll develop the new technologies, and we'll have intellectual property, and we'll get everything, and you'll get nothing. The more of the Western model that you follow, the more unbalanced the world becomes. And there's a problem. If one country has all the surplus and another country has all the debt, how do you recycle the surplus? There's no mechanism to recycle the surplus in the foreign aid area. The only thing you can do is you can give aid or you can give loans. So you put the person in more debt. So the surplus recycling mechanism in the West was essentially a cycle of perpetual debt. That was the Western model of development. What the flying geese, or what the Chinese seem to be doing now, Chinese government is doing, the state-owned enterprise are doing, is, it seems to me, it's the flying goose. You should do part of the stages of thing, but we are moving to 6G now, in that sense. And we have to also struggle because 6G may not have as much employment as the other one. And now we may have an employment crisis. So there are problems with the model. But at any rate, the issue is there is a small surplus recycling mechanism. If we have big surpluses, we will transfer our surplus to you by building infrastructure. And we will build a lot of infrastructure. So at least in my view, the Chinese have developed some form of surplus recycling mechanism. My opinion is on the question of development and on the question of the macroeconomic issues, we need a robust debate, international debate on creating a surplus recycling mechanism. Germany has the surplus, Greece has a deficit. How does German surplus go to Greece? It's not like that's German money. It just happens the way capitalism works. One place appropriates more wealth. Somebody in any interaction, it's not easy to balance an interaction. Otherwise, there'd be no capitalism. We'll have just simple barter. I give you an axe, you give me a chicken, and then back and forth. I mean, somebody is appropriating more in the interaction. That's how capitalism works. So there will be an imbalance. How do I recycle my surplus to you? Well, the way it works in advanced capitalism is I lend you money. But lending you money means you go more in debt. Household debt will increase. So households can't save. Businesses are holding money. They are hoarding money. Governments are going. So government debt, household debt, businesses with surplus. The Chinese, it seems to me, in terms of international trade, have taken the position, yes, this trade has benefited us. We have huge current account surpluses, and now we'll recycle the surplus by building transportation networks, this, that, and the other. I think it's much more productive than what one sees from the foreign aid model, but it's still insufficient. We still need to have a public debate. What's the best way to recycle surplus? I'll give you an example. Shouldn't surpluses be recycled more democratically? Right now, the Chinese government will say we should build a road here or a train there. I think we should advance to the stage where we have regional organizations or world some sort of world organization that where there's a debate. Do we need a port in here, or should we have it there? If we don't build a port here, it's the sunrise sunset thing. When you build a railway line, the town along the railway line flourishes. The town along the place where the line wasn't built dies. No, that's not fair to this town. You built a port here. What about we provide some expectation for this place? So that requires a kind of regional equity thinking, for which you need public institutions that are able to make decisions about recycling surplus. You cannot leave it to one country. I mean, China is doing an admirable job on this, but this cannot be left to one country, with surpluses to determine how surplus should be recycled. We got to advance the conversation.